Why should you care about self-appraisals in your performance review? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, this is Jill from the Northwoods, talking about how to make your life better one small step at a time. This is a game that I've been playing forever. I hate self-appraisals. And you know what? I've been playing it wrong my entire life. I'm doing another episode that's sort of a companion to this in Small Steps with AI, where I talked about how I used AI to help me write a better self-performance appraisal. But we're going to talk more about what's going on, not just talking at all about how to write better bullets or better points or remembering your accomplishments through the years. Instead, there's a game being played inside most performance review systems, and maybe you never knew it, as I probably never knew it, but I've done it wrong. And we think of self-performance reviews as a documentation exercise. We mostly hate it. You write down what you did, and your manager writes down what they thought you did, and then they compare notes and sort of assign a rating, and then the year's officially in the records. And now, whether your pay is based on it or not, that's how it is. But that's the surface level of what's actually underneath it. Your manager doesn't read your reviews and then file it away. In most organizations, managers sit in a room together and do what is sometimes called a calibration meeting. And this is also a alignment session. And what they do is they compare their teams to each other. And they're not comparing the resumes of them. They're comparing the narrative story of that person. And so maybe your manager walks into that room with the story that you gave them. And if your story was strong and specific and demonstrates real impact, your manager has material for you to work with. They can advocate for you. They can say, this is what this person did this last year. This is why they were a great employee. These are the projects they worked on. And this is why they deserve some recognition. The recognition, like I said, could be in terms of pay. It could be in terms of promotions that are coming up. Or even, I want to say, the reverse of things. That if there are layoffs coming, this kind of recognition can be the kind of thing that will save you instead of the person, maybe getting you a positive thing. But this is what this person is doing. But if your story is thin and you say stuff like, and this is where I went wrong, right? I supported various projects. I assisted with upgrades. Your manager basically walks into those meetings with very little ammunition. They might know you did excellent work, but if you can't describe it clearly, they probably can't describe it clearly either. And in a room full of other managers, all of them advocating for their own people, vague just doesn't win. And your self-evaluation is not just for your file. It is the brief your manager takes into that room where your future gets discussed. How clearly you write it determines how well your manager fights for you. It's always funny. And this came about because I wrote my self-evaluation. I had AI take a look at it, and it basically summarized my evaluation as I did some stuff and nobody died. That I didn't explain my projects. I didn't toot my own horn. I didn't explain the impact I had in my job. And this has been a problem for years. I can tell you that I've always been terrible at self-performance reviews because I don't like to be braggy. I'm not a very good, touting my own ability. And I got feedback a few years ago from one of my managers, and he told me that essentially I need to be stronger in how I describe my own work. And my first reaction was kind of defensiveness. Well, I'm not going to exaggerate what I did. I'm just not a braggy person. That's just not who I am. But that's not what he was asking for. What he was telling me, and what I've come to understand much more clearly, is that he needed me to give him something so that he could use it. He wasn't asking me to invent accomplishments. He wasn't asking me to make up things that I didn't do. He wanted real accomplishments with enough specificity and confidence that he could go in the room and repeat them in front of a group of managers. The big difference between exaggerating and articulating what you did is huge. Exaggerating means that you're making claims of things that didn't happen. Articulating means that you're describing what did happen in language that communicates its actual weight. Most of us struggle with self-reviews eh, are not because of exaggeration. It's that we're under articulators. We know what we did. We just describe it in the smallest terms possible because anything louder feels uncomfortable. And what I finally understood with my manager is that my manager was on my side. He wanted to advocate for me. He wanted the right words to explain what I did. He was probably sitting there hoping, gosh, I just wish Jill would stand up for herself. I wish she would say something that would give me ammunition to say how wonderful my work was, and I wasn't doing it. I remember the other comment that AI made on my self-appraisal this year was that I described everything I did like I was unloading a dishwasher. That was the impact that it felt from what I wrote. And now I understand the situation. My manager then, he was not asking me to brag. My manager now, not asking me to brag. They're asking me to give them an articulated brief of what I've been doing. And I've been handing them a performance review that indicated my worth is as good as unloading a dishwasher. That's pretty harsh. And this is where it even gets more comfortable, or complicated and more discomforting from my own point of view too, is that my own accomplishments aren't random. It didn't just come from nowhere. It came from a culture I grew up in. A lot of us have cultures that actively taught us about how we talk about ourselves, how we avoid certain things, we avoid talking about ourselves. I grew up in the Midwest, and the Midwest culture is, shucks, darn. Humility is a social rule. You don't draw attention to yourself. You let your work speak for itself. You deflect your compliments. Oh, geez, gosh, it was a team effort. We all did it. And we share credit. And even if we do it sometimes more generously than the facts actually require. If someone tells a Midwesterner they did a great job, and I can tell you this is true from my point of view, it was a team effort. Anyone could have done it, and what we're meaning when we say, it's genuine, it comes from a real place. And what my friends have beat into me is, Jill, just say thank you. Just say thank you and quit trying to deflect it all the time. But the performance review system, it reads as weakness. It really does. Compared to someone who grew up in a culture where self-advocacy is expected in many normal situations. I used to travel across the United States for my job. The East Coast is very professional. It's very hardcore, business. New York is a city of business. And you're in a competitive industry. You're expected to walk into review and make a clear case for yourself, not a modest one. And even in California, humility is not a sign of strength. Even though it's not as corporate-y as the East Coast is, it expects competence. It expects action. It expects you to have done substantial work. And if you give silence, that's not humility. It's a missed opportunity. If you don't tell your story, someone else is going to tell their story louder, and that room will move on away from you. So this is not about arrogance. It's about, I guess it's a literacy. It's an accomplishment that other people have learned the rules of the game, and you're not playing them. And if you zoom further out globally, even bigger places, in some East Asian communities, professional cultures, the groups matter more than the individuals. And drawing attention to your personal contributions feels inappropriate, disrespectful to your teammates. In many Western European cultures, particularly Scandinavia, there's a deep cultural value, the idea that no one should consider themselves better or more important than anyone else. And so self-promotion in those environments is genuinely frowned upon. Meanwhile, in the United States, particularly in corporate America, performance review system is largely designed by and for people who are comfortable with making a direct case for themselves. And It's not that I think that any of these cultural systems are wrong. They just reflect the values of the community, of humility, and how people relate to each other. But if your cultural wiring says to you, stay small, be quiet, operate under the radar, and someone else is operating in a system that says, speak up, be an advocate for yourself, tell your story of this last year, you are going to lose ground to people who simply know how to play the rules better. And it may not be fair, but it's absolutely true. And so, what I want to offer to you is a framing of the situation. I love framings, if you know me at all, that helped me through this. This is not about becoming someone who brags. This is about becoming someone who is telling a story accurately. You're not abandoning humility or pretending to do things you didn't do when you tell the accurate story of your year. Humility would say something like, oh, I know I didn't do this alone. I know I have more to learn. I know the team around me made this possible. Inaccuracy would say, I barely did anything. The statements are not the same, but a lot of us feel that we're writing a self-review inaccurately when we think we're writing a self-review that's humble, and it's not true. So if a colleague did exactly what you did this year, completed the same certification, supported the same people, described, clearly in their self-appraisals, what do you think? Would you think that they're bragging about themselves? And probably not. You'd say, oh, you know what? That guy, he did a great job this year. You probably thought they would wrote a really good review. And so why does it affect you differently when you're writing your own? The gap is how you read someone else's accurate self-description about what they did in the last year and how you describe yourself and your own work and you diminish it. It's worth examining because it's not just a cultural gap. It's not even just an honesty gap. It is you putting yourself in the worst possible light. So what do you do with this? How can you move on if you're one of these people that does the same thing? Is first understand the system. Your review is a brief for your manager. Write it with that in mind. Your manager needs to be able to walk into a room, describe your year in 2 minutes, and leave the other managers with an understanding about why your contributions mattered. Give them the words to do that. Second, separate accuracy from boasting. Before you soften a sentence, ask yourself, is this true? If the answer is yes, then leave it alone. The discomfort you feel is cultural conditioning. And it's not a conscience alarm, right? You're not lying. You are accurately describing something that's true, and that's okay. The third is to find a translator. And this is a genuinely useful thing that you can do. Ask someone who might be your friend to read your next draft, a colleague, maybe even someone from a different background, a friend who has worked with you for a while, or someone who's a better self-advocate for themselves. What can push you to give a stronger self-appraisal? Now, in my case, like I said, we're doing another companion podcast to this. I turned to AI. I gave AI, and I wrote this whole script where it was going to scour my calendar and my email, come up with a self-evaluation, look at mine, and then write another draft of my self-evaluation. And we're going to talk about that in small steps with AI because what I got was well beyond what I expected to get. If you're trying to do a better performance evaluation, having other people or even AI to bounce your review off of them is going to reveal to you where your blind spots are. That's the important part of all of this. And the fourth is to keep evidence throughout the year, not a brag file, an evidence file. When a project finishes, write a one-line sentence about it. When someone thanks you for something specifically, note it. When you complete training, write it down. And by the time your review season comes along, you won't be trying to reconstruct the entire year from memory. You'll have the raw materials there already. So your small step for this week is to, I think, take a look at something that you accomplished recently at work or at home or some area in your life and try describing it out loud to yourself and just see how you describe it. Notice the ways that you either downplay it or play it up. If you were to give this to a colleague, and what would they say about it? Would they say that this is accurate? Or if you were to read this from your coworker, would you be proud of them? Would you not minimize their efforts? Would you not hedge around it? Would you consider it to be accurate? That's how you're supposed to do. Notice how you feel if this were going to be someone else versus what your is. That uncomfortable feeling is worth paying attention to because the discomfort is information. It is telling you that your wiring might be against the system that rewards a different kind of communication. You don't have to become someone who brags. You have to become someone who tells an accurate story. The system needs that from you. Your boss needs that from you. And frankly, you need that from you. And I think in the end, like I said, whether it's promotions, raises, or maybe just not being the person who gets laid off, it is important for you to tell an accurate story of your year. And I've been failing at this for a really long time. And so I was glad through this AI experience to get this pointed out to me. And this year's performance appraisal is hopefully a lot better than the previous ones I've done. It's stronger. It doesn't oversell what I did. And hopefully it doesn't make my last year of work sound like I unloaded the dishwasher. All right, everyone, thanks so much for joining me today. If this episode hits close to home for you, I would love to hear from you. You can put a comment right here if you're watching this on a video. You can email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. And you can find all my shows at jillfromthenorthwoods.com. Wanted to point out that I am speaking in July at a conference, and it is called MacStock, and you can find it at MacStock Conference. It is talking specifically about Apple products, and there's going to be a lot of different things there. There's going to be a creator camp that I am going to because I'm trying to learn how to do this better, but also a lot of different technical articles about how you can use your technology better. And I'm one of the speakers there. So check out the conference website. It would be really, I think, great if you could come. I'd love to get to meet you. And if you come, tell me that you're there. But I think in the end, this week is if you know someone who's quietly doing excellent work and describing it in the smallest terms possible, and maybe it's just you, send them this episode their way. Thanks so much and have a great day.